lot of people have these just massive conversion moments, and it's just like a St. Paul experience. I never really had one of those. That I grew up in a good Catholic home, good mom, good dad. I never had just this flash of light where I got everything and I changed. It's been a very daily battle, and just one step at a time trying to grow closer to God. But with Eucharistic adoration, we had a good priest at the parish that I grew up with, and it always seemed very important to him. And then I went to World Youth Day and started to read the writings of John Paul II, and really just fell in love with him as a man, just his spirituality. And just the depth of his prayer life was extraordinary. He said he remembers as a young boy walking through his house, and his mom had died, his brother had died, his sister had died, and it was just him and his dad. In the middle of the night, he looked into his dad's room and he saw his dad kneeling, just lost in prayer, and understood that men must be men of prayer. This is not just something for old ladies. And if you look at his devotional life, how often he'd visit the Eucharist, I asked a priest who was friends with him, how often would he go to visit the Eucharist? And he said about 20 times a day, in and out, in and out, in and out. Just seeing the authenticity of his life and literally the holiness of his holiness. And realize, where does this come from? The source of holiness for every saint has always been the same, Christ. So whether it's St. Therese of Lisieux, or whether Thomas Aquinas or John Paul II, they all drank from the same fountain, which is Christ. The Eucharist is the eye in the storm. You know, whenever you see a hurricane, the eye of the storm. Apparently, I've never been in one, but you can come out, you can fly a kite, walk around, walk the dog. It's peaceful, the sky is blue, but the rest of the storm is going to come. But it's that time where everything is still. And so for me, adoration is that sacrament of silence, when there's so much noise in our life. You know, like I can't even walk from one room in my house to the next room without looking at my cell phone. You know, like I've got 30 seconds, let me look at my phone. Let me see if I have a text. Let me see if an email came in. There's just input. And adoration is a time just to put everything down where you can be alone with the one who loves you and to wrestle in prayer there, to wrestle in those times of dryness and let him speak to you. Instead of just getting there, talking and getting up and go, but learning how to receive from him and just be still. Like there's the story of St. John Vianney. He saw this poor man that would come in the back of his church and just sit there, kind of near the poor box. And John Vianney was like, well, is he going to steal money? What is he doing? And eventually, one day went to the poor man and asked him, you know, what are you doing? And he said, well, I look at him, meaning Jesus in the tabernacle, and he looks at me. And Vianney said, that's it? And the man said, well, what else is there? And so my goal is to get to that level in prayer where I can just be, almost like a 90-year-old married couple that can have a meal without even needing to talk to each other, because everything's been said. They can just be in each other's presence. And so in adoration is when I learn to pray, learn to be loved by God, and learn to listen to him. She's everything to me. She's everything to the ministry. We've consecrated myself to her, my marriage to her, our children to her, the ministry to her. It's all hers. And this is partly also the spirituality of John Paul II. I mean, he consecrated everything he could get his hands on and gave it to her like every country. It's yours. And it's not because she's the final end of our devotions, obviously. It's to lead us closer to Christ. But I've found that you make so much more progress in the spiritual life under even just a short time of total devotion to her than you do in years without this kind of devotion. And it doesn't distract you from Christ. It's not, well, I gave her 10 Hail Marys and Jesus gets one Our Father. You know, it doesn't work like that. Her whole purpose is to lead you closer to Christ. And it's like the beauty of the moon. It obtains all its beauty and all its light and all its warmth because of the sun. And in this dark night of our life, of these trials and then temptations, you know, we can look to her and see the reflection of the glory of her Son. And so, you know, again, it's not a competition between her and Jesus. The closer you get to her, the more perfectly you can love him.